Hi, Elaine here from markergeek.com. Today I'm sharing another Mermaid shaker card featuring the tiny Townie Mermaid from Stamping Bella. Simply because I wanted to talk a little bit about what I did differently here. In a previous video, I talked about how I had a few issues with using the fun foam to create the shaker portion of the card. So I tried something slightly different this time, and I just wanted to share that with you. As you can see here, I pre-die cut the fun foam pieces. I basically used a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die to cut my cardstock for the front. Using a pearlescent cardstock, and I also used a circle die, a stitch circle actually, but any circle die would work, to cut the frame for the shaker area. And then what I did was I grabbed some fun foam, two pieces of fun foam, trimmed them down to be slightly smaller than the rectangle die cut, and used a larger size of circle die to cut the window from those. This meant that rather than trying to match up die cut pieces, in a previous video, it was when I did the Little's summer beach scene shaker card, I tried to use a die cut rectangle frame and tried to match up the same size of die cut in the cardstock and the fun foam pieces, which didn't work very well because the fun foam kind of squishes as it goes through the die cutting machine, and then kind of ends up a little bit stretched and misshapen. So it makes it a little bit more difficult. Using this method, it works brilliantly, except for I had a little bit of a issue in that I didn't really think it through before cutting my fun foam pieces. I knew I wanted to use 2 fun foam pieces to get the depth that I wanted for the shaker area. So I thought that, yeah, that's fine, I'll stick them together. Then I decided to try and stick them together using score tape, which was quite fiddly. As you can see, the edges around the circle window area are quite narrow, and also, yeah, it got a little bit messy, it got a little bit fiddly. It probably would have been better if I'd have used liquid adhesive, but even so, it was a little bit fiddly. So you'll see in a minute that I'm actually going to cut some more fun foam. And this time I applied my Fabri-Tac liquid adhesive before I die cut the window area. So I got 2 pieces of fun foam, cut them down to be slightly smaller than my rectangle die cut, stuck them together, left it to dry completely, and then die cut the window from that, which made it much easier to manipulate in the end. Here you can see that I was just applying the acetate to that front piece. I've also stamped one of the sentiments from the Under the Sea sentiment set, which is also from Stamping Bella. I've assembled that. Now I'm matching up the window using the circle die that is slightly larger than the one on the front of the card. Just makes it so much easier just to line everything up so that none of that fun foam is visible. As you can see, this is me adhering those 2 pieces of fun foam, which I left to dry completely. Fabri-Tac glue is fairly fast drying. I left them for a good while, probably an hour or so, came back and die cut that piece. And then I was able to use, I used score tape for the side that would be adhered to the front panel, simply because I wanted to be absolutely sure that it would stick nicely to the acetate and not sort of come away. And I know that score tape works really well for this. Fabri-Tac glue should, and I will test it at some point because it does work on things like plastic. So I will test that at some point, but as I haven't tested it to this point, I just wanted to be sure that my shaker wasn't going to fall apart and spill sequins and beads everywhere. I then used the Fabri-Tac glue to do the bottom portion, which I knew would be stuck to the cardstock. For the base layer, I used again that beautiful black sparkle cardstock from Paper Mill Direct here in the UK. Still a little bit obsessed with this, to be honest. It is so pretty, and I think it works really nicely with the sequins, the colours in the shaker mix that I use, just to make it really bold and eye-catching. There is, just to say, as you've probably noticed, there is no colouring in this video. I'm using an image actually that I coloured when I was originally colouring the Stampin' Bella product images last year. So I dug that out of my stash and die cut that using the coordinating die set, which made this card really fast to put together. If you would like to see the Copic colouring for the Tiny Townie Mermaid stamp set, I will link that video in the description below for you. And also, obviously, my blog post will be linked in the description below here on YouTube. Now, as you can see, I'm adding in some shaker mix from Lucy's Cards. This is an older one. I'm not sure if it's still available, but this was actually one that I bought. It was a winter or Christmas mix. So you can see that I have picked out the snowflake sequins, and I just added in some beads, etc. from my stash just to fill it out a little bit more. And then once I'm done with that, I will obviously put the front panel on and then adhere the mermaid. If you missed it, I did another shaker card recently featuring the same Tiny Townie Mermaid, except that one was coloured with polychromos pencils from Faber-Castell, and that video includes the colouring. So if you're interested in that, I will also link that in the description below. That was my video from last Saturday, I believe. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I've kind of figured out where I am with fun foam now, so I can use up the remaining fun foam I have in my stash. I definitely prefer it to using foam tape, especially on a card where the window is going to be kind of larger, just to make sure that all of those areas are easily supported, and it's so much easier than having to line up pieces of foam tape. I always tend to get a little bit messy with that. However, it's still not my favourite. I definitely do prefer the stacking of thicker pieces of card to create it. I tend to prefer a really sturdy feeling card. I like something that's got just a little bit of weight to it, which isn't always practical for putting in the post. But yeah, I do tend to prefer it. But this is definitely a really good and easy way of creating a shaker card. It works really nicely. And it's definitely better to try and work with the fun foam, work with the properties of the fun foam, and the fact that it does kind of squish out and stretch and get a little bit out of shape in the die cutting process. So working with that and making sure that you've kind of cut it to a smaller size than your panels definitely helps. Trying to work with it by using exact die cut pieces isn't, in my experience, the best. So I definitely preferred this method. I will probably use it again. And that's that. So thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe. And all the info is in the description below with all the links to blog posts, etc. And I will catch you next time.